Chapter 1. The Weakness That Rules Modern Men. Every man today is fighting a silent war, not against enemies or armies, but against himself. Against the distraction that robs him of focus before the day even begins, against the comfort that weakens his will, against the noise that buries his purpose. You wake up, reach for your phone, and your spirit is already divided. You scroll for meaning. You chase stimulation, but deep down you feel hollow. That hollowness is not laziness, it's misdirection. The modern man is drowning. Not in failure, but in excess, too many choices, too many comforts, too many ways to escape the discomfort that forges real strength. Musashi once said that the man who cannot control his mind will always be ruled by it. You can build muscles, wealth, even fame, but if your spirit is scattered, your victories will feel empty. Most people today do not lack opportunity, they lack mastery. They confuse movement with progress, attention with discipline, comfort with happiness. The result is a generation that feels busy but goes nowhere. We are surrounded by information, yet starved for wisdom. We have thousands of tools, but no direction. And every day that passes without clarity makes the mind softer, weaker, and more dependent on distraction to survive. But Musashi saw this weakness long before it existed, centuries ago, in the chaos of battle and isolation. He uncovered an ancient secret, the path to forging an unbreakable mind. It wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It wasn't gifts from birth or fortune. It was training daily, deliberate and brutal. He understood that life is not a series of victories and losses. It's a constant practice of sharpening the spirit, and that is the secret most men will never grasp. The battle never ends. You don't win life, you discipline it. You don't find peace, you build it. You are about to learn 8 lessons that forged Musashi into an unbreakable force, a warrior whose calm was stronger than fear, whose focus was sharper than any blade, and whose solitude turned into wisdom. But before we begin, I want you to pause and breathe. Ask yourself, how long has it been since you truly sat with your own mind, without distraction? If that question unsettles you, stay until the end. This isn't just another story, it's training, if you truly listen. If you stay through each lesson and apply them not as ideas, but as practices, they can reshape the way you live, work, and think. So stay with me. Subscribe not for entertainment, but for discipline. Every video here is a form of training. Every word a strike against your weakness. This channel is not for the comfortable. It's for those who wish to rise above comfort, if that's you. Stay until the end, because what you learn today will change how you see yourself forever. Chapter 2. The Wanderer's Return. The story begins in the twilight of Musashi's life. He had fought over 60 duels, faced countless enemies, and yet, in his final years, he lived not as a warrior but as a hermit. The villagers of Kyushu whispered about the strange man who lived alone in a cave, meditating, painting, and writing by candlelight. To them, he was either mad or enlightened. They did not know that the same hands that once wielded a sword now sought stillness. The same mind that once strategized in battle now studied silence. It was said that Musashi could defeat any man. But what he pursued in his final years was not victory, it was understanding. He no longer cared for reputation or status. The duels that once defined him had become irrelevant. He had realized that the greatest opponent was never another warrior. It was the restless mind, the voice that craves, fears, and wavers. He wanted to kill that voice completely. One evening, as the last orange light faded behind the mountains, a young man climbed the narrow path to Musashi's cave. His name was Daichi, a soldier who had heard tales of the undefeated master. His heart burned with ambition. He wanted to learn the way of the sword, to become invincible. When he arrived, he found Musashi sitting cross-legged before a small fire, his face lit by its faint glow. There were no weapons, no armor, no trophies of war, only a few scrolls, brushes, and stones. Daichi bowed deeply and said, "Master Musashi, I have traveled for weeks to learn from you. I wish to become strong like you." Musashi looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. "Strong?" he said. "Why?" Daichi hesitated. "Because strength is power. I want to win in battle. I want to conquer fear." Musashi turned his gaze back to the fire. "And what will you do once you win?" Daichi was silent. He hadn't thought that far. Musashi smiled faintly, as if he had seen this pattern countless times. "Very well," he said. "If you wish to learn, stay. But understand this, I no longer teach the sword. I teach the spirit. If you master the spirit, the sword will follow." Daiichi bowed again, trying to hide his confusion. He had expected lessons in combat, in speed and precision, not riddles spoken by an old man beside a dying fire, but he stayed, thinking that perhaps the true training would begin in the morning. Chapter 3. The young challenger. Morning came with mist thick as smoke. Musashi was already awake, seated outside the cave, his eyes half closed, his breathing slow and measured. Daiichi stood nearby, restless. The ground was cold, the air heavy, the silence unbearable. Finally, Musashi opened his eyes and said, "You will fetch water from the stream, chop wood for the fire, and meditate until I return." Daiichi frowned. "Master, I came to train with the sword, not to do chores." Musashi looked at him calmly. "Then you are not ready to hold the sword. Begin with stillness. Strength without stillness is chaos." Reluctantly, Daiichi obeyed. He carried buckets from the stream, chopped logs until his arms ached, and sat in silence as ordered, but his mind was noisy. Every swing of the axe felt meaningless. Every minute of silence felt like punishment. By evening, when Musashi returned, Daiichi's frustration boiled over. "Why am I doing this?" he shouted. "I came here to learn mastery, not to play servant." Musashi stood before him quietly, his hands folded. "And yet you cannot even master your own impatience." Daiichi clenched his fists. "If you think I'm weak, then prove it. Face me in a duel." Musashi sighed, his expression neither angry nor amused. "Very well," he said, standing and walking to an open patch of ground. He carried no sword, only a stick he picked from the ground. "Attack!" Daiichi drew his blade, rushing forward with all the speed and strength he had. But before he could complete his strike, Musashi moved once barely a shift of his body, and the stick in his hand tapped Daiichi's wrist. The sword fell from his grasp. In less than a breath, it was over. Daiichi fell to his knees, stunned. How did you do that?" Musashi looked down at him and said, "You swing your sword with strength, but you live your life with weakness. You fight others, but never yourself. That is why you will always lose." His words hit harder than any strike. Daiichi stared at the ground, humiliated yet awakened. Musashi's calm wasn't arrogance, it was mastery, the kind of control that no technique could teach. For the first time, Daiichi felt not anger, but shame. He realized his greatest enemy wasn't the man before him, it was the chaos inside him. Musashi walked back toward the cave, leaving Daiichi kneeling in the dirt. "When you are ready to fight yourself," he said softly, "then you will begin to learn." Chapter 4. The Mirror of Weakness. The next few days were quiet. Daiichi no longer spoke of duels. He began to see the rhythm in the tasks he once resented. Fetching water became meditation, chopping wood became training in precision, even silence became bearable. His body moved, but his mind began to slow. The noise within him grew softer. One evening, Musashi spoke without looking up from his fire. "You came to learn victory, but first you must learn defeat. Until you can accept defeat without pride, you will never understand victory." Daiichi looked confused. "But master, I was defeated by you already." Musashi nodded. "No, you were humiliated, not defeated. Humiliation comes from ego, defeat comes from truth. They are not the same." That night, Daiichi sat alone outside the cave, the wind whispering through the trees. For the first time in his life, he allowed himself to feel small, not in a way that broke him, but in a way that humbled him. He realized that he had spent his whole life chasing recognition, winning battles that meant nothing, seeking validation from others because he feared to face himself. And in that quiet moment, something within him shifted. He began to see that Musashi's training wasn't about fighting others. It was about mastering the invisible war inside, the war between impulse and intention, between pride and purpose, between noise and silence. He was finally ready to listen. Chapter 5. The 8 Lessons of the Unbreakable Mind. The next morning, Daiichi woke before dawn. The mist was thick around the mountain, and the air was sharp with cold. Musashi was already awake, seated on a flat stone overlooking the valley. Without turning, he said, "You are ready to learn not because you have become strong, but because you have begun to see your weakness." Daiichi knelt beside him. "Teach me, master," he said quietly. Musashi nodded. "There are 8 lessons that forge the unbreakable mind. They are not techniques of the sword, but disciplines of the spirit. Learn them, and no man, no failure, no hardship will ever bend you again." 1. Clarity over chaos. Musashi drew a line in the dirt with his staff. See this line? He asked. It is straight. It does not waver. Most men live like this. He drew another line. Erratic and broken. They chase one desire, then another. They rush toward pleasure, then flee from pain. Their minds are storms. The man of clarity walks one path, while others wander in circles. He turned to Daichi. You cannot hit a target you cannot see. To see clearly, you must learn to separate what is real from what is imagined. In battle, a man who fears dying dies before he is struck. His fear makes ghosts where there are none. So too in life most of your suffering comes not from reality but from your imagination. Modern psychologists call this cognitive distortion, the tendency to exaggerate, assume, and catastrophize. Musashi understood this centuries ago. He taught that the first step to mastery is seeing things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Clarity, Musashi said, is the blade that cuts through illusion. Train your mind to observe, not to react. The warrior's vision is stillness in the storm. Daichi bowed his head. Then clarity must come before courage. Musashi nodded. Always. The man who cannot see the battlefield clearly cannot win, no matter how brave he feels. 2. Discipline over desire. They walked down the mountain path until they reached the river. Musashi handed Daichi a wooden bucket. Fill this and carry it to the top of the hill, then do it again until sunset. Daichi stared in disbelief. All day? Musashi simply said, yes. The first few trips were easy, then the weight of the water grew unbearable. By midday, his hands blistered, his legs trembled. When he finally set the bucket down, Musashi looked at him and said, Now you understand discipline, Daichi panted, barely able to stand. But what does this have to do with the sword? Musashi answered, Everything. A man's strength is not measured by what he can do once, but by what he can do every day without breaking. Desire makes you act when it feels good. Discipline makes you act even when it doesn't. He pointed at the river below. Water wears down the rock not by force but by repetition, so too must you train not with bursts of effort, but with quiet persistence. Your body will resist, your mind will rebel, but the warrior does not obey emotion, he obeys his purpose. Neuroscientists today would agree, the brain rewires itself through consistent repetition. Not motivation, Musashi lived this truth long before science named it. Desire is the fire, Musashi said. Discipline is the hand that controls it. 3. Emptiness over emotion that night. They sat in silence as rain began to fall. The fire crackled and hissed. Daichi watched the droplets form on the leaves outside. Master, he said softly, how can I still my emotions? I am not made of stone. Musashi smiled faintly. Nor am I, but a warrior does not drown in emotion. He lets it pass through him like wind through bamboo. Feel, but do not cling, react, but do not lose balance. He gestured to the rain. When I was young, I fought with anger. I believe fury gave me strength, but anger clouds judgment. It makes your hand heavy and your mind blind. Calm is power. The man who remains calm when others panic already holds victory. Scientists at the University of Tokyo once found that emotional control reduces cortisol, the stress hormone that clouds decision-making. What Musashi practiced through meditation, modern research now calls emotional regulation. Stillness, Musashi said, is not emptiness, it is mastery of motion. The ocean looks calm, but beneath it is immense force. That is the kind of calm you must learn. Daichi closed his eyes, letting the rhythm of the rain slow his breath. For the first time, he understood that emotion was not his enemy, it was his test for adaptation over rigidity. In the following days, Musashi took Daichi to a nearby forest. Today, he said, we learn adaptation. He handed Daichi a sword made of bamboo. Attack me. Daichi hesitated, then lunged forward. Musashi deflected easily, then moved in a pattern Daichi could not predict, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes fluid, sometimes abrupt. It was like fighting the wind. Do you see? Musashi said as they paused. A rigid mind is brittle. The man who clings to one form will break when the form fails. But the one who flows can never be trapped. You must learn to be like water taking the shape of every challenge, filling the space that your enemy leaves open. Daichi frowned. But if I change constantly, won't I lose my identity? Musashi shook his head. No, the tree bends in the storm and survives. The one that resists breaks. Adaptation is not weakness, it is intelligence. This lesson extended far beyond the sword. Musashi wanted him to see that life. 2. Demands flexibility. The one who refuses to change with time becomes a relic of the past. Never confuse consistency with stubbornness, Musashi said. Consistency is strength in motion. Stubbornness is death in disguise. 5. Purpose over pleasure. Later, as they sat by the stream, Musashi picked up a small stone and tossed it into the water. The next lesson, he said, is to do nothing that is of no use. Deki tilted his head. How can I know what is useful? Musashi replied, by asking one question, does this serve my purpose? Every action, every word, every thought must be weighed against that. If it does not serve your path, it weakens it. He gestured around them. Men chase pleasure because they fear stillness. They seek distraction because they are terrified of purpose. But a man who has a purpose is not easily tempted. He knows where his energy belongs. He looked directly at Daichi. The world will offer you endless pleasures, comfort, praise, wealth, but every time you choose them over growth, your spirit dulls. To live with purpose is to sacrifice ease for meaning. A researcher at Harvard once found that long-term fulfillment correlates not with pleasure, but with a sense of purpose. It is purpose, not happiness, that gives life direction. Musashi lived this truth through austerity and solitude. When the path is clear, Musashi said, pleasure becomes irrelevant. The warrior's joy is found in the act of becoming. 6. Patience over impulse. Days passed, and Daichi's training grew harder. One morning, Musashi told him to sit by the river and watch the water flow until sunset. Deki protested. All day? That is not training, it is torture, Musashi smiled. Then let the torture teach you. Hours passed. The sun moved slowly. Daichi's legs ached. His mind screamed for movement, but when he finally stopped resisting, something changed. The sound of the water grew deeper, the air clearer, his thoughts slower. By the time Musashi returned, the sun had dipped behind the mountains, and Daichi had not moved for hours. Musashi nodded in approval. Now you understand patience. Strength without patience is wasted energy. The seed that grows fast dies fast. The one that grows slow grows strong. In neuroscience, delayed gratification strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focus and decision-making. Musashi, without knowing the science, trained it through endurance. Do not rush your path, Musashi said. A man in haste trips on his own feet. The mountain does not move, yet it reaches the sky. 7. Courage over fear. As evening fell, Musashi lit a small lantern and looked at Daichi. The next lesson is courage, but not the kind you imagine. He held the lantern high. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting while fear breathes down your neck. You will never defeat fear by running from it. You conquer it by walking straight toward it again and again until it loses its teeth. Deki swallowed hard. But master, what if fear never leaves me? Musashi smiled gently. Then you walk with it. The warrior does not wait for fear to vanish. He learns to move despite it. He stared into the fire. When I was young, I fought duels knowing each could be my last. One day I stopped fearing death, not because I wanted to die, but because I understood that fear of death is fear of life. Once you accept death, nothing can enslave you. You become unstoppable. Modern research supports this ancient truth. Exposure therapy. A key psychological treatment for anxiety is built on the same principle. By confronting fear directly, the brain rewires itself to see it as manageable. Remember, Musashi said, fear is not your enemy, cowardice is. 8. Solitude over approval. Their final lesson came at sunrise. Musashi stood on the edge of the cliff overlooking the valley. You have learned much, he said, but this is the hardest lesson. Walk alone. Deki frowned. Alone? Why must I be alone to be strong? Musashi answered, because the approval of others weakens the will. When you need to be seen, you stop seeing yourself. The man who depends on applause will always dance for it, but the man who walks alone can never be controlled. He placed a hand on Daichi's shoulder. When you find peace in solitude, you find freedom. When you no longer need validation, you find power. The world cannot break the one who stands alone. He turned away, looking at the rising sun. Remember this. Solitude is not loneliness, it is self-respect. And only in solitude can you hear the voice of your own spirit. Daichi bowed deeply, his chest filled with a strange calm. The noise in his mind had quieted, his hands no longer trembled. For the first time, He felt not like a student, but like a warrior in his own right. Chapter 6, The Still Blade, when the final lesson ended. The mountain was silent, the wind had fallen, and the morning light poured through the clouds like a blessing. Musashi stood motionless, his hands behind his back as Daichi bowed deeply before him. The young warrior's face was calm, his posture steady. The wild fire of arrogance that once lived in his eyes had been replaced by stillness. He no longer asked questions, no longer sought shortcuts or praise. He had come searching for a teacher, and now he understood the lessons were never about the sword. They were about himself. For many days after, Musashi said little. He let Daichi train in silence, striking at invisible enemies, meditating beside the stream, moving through form and stillness until his mind and body were one. The sword no longer felt heavy in Daichi's hand. It was not a tool for war anymore, but an extension of his awareness. When Musashi finally spoke, his words were quiet but sharp. The unbreakable mind is not born from strength. It is born from understanding. The man who knows himself cannot be defeated, not by others, not by fear, not even by life itself. Daichi lifted his gaze. Then, master, he asked softly, when does the training end? Musashi smiled. When you die. Until then, you train. The young warrior nodded, finally grasping what his master meant. The path of mastery was endless. The moment you think you've arrived, your mind begins to rot. True strength was not about victory. It was about constancy. The sword must always be sharpened. The mind must always be trained. The soul must always be examined. That evening, as they watched the sunset, Musashi said, "You have learned the 8 lessons. Now go into the world and forget them." Daichi looked puzzled. Forget them? Musashi nodded. The master's wisdom must vanish so that your own can appear. Carry the essence, not the form. Remember, knowledge is the enemy of practice when it becomes pride. Daichi bowed once more. Then I will walk the path alone. Musashi placed a hand on his shoulder. You are never truly alone, he said. When the mind is unshaken, even silence becomes your companion. Chapter 7, The Modern Battlefield. Centuries have passed, but Musashi's lessons are more vital now than ever. The battlefield has changed. It's no longer fought with swords and spears, but with attention, emotion, and time. The enemies are invisible. Distraction, addiction, vanity, fear. Most people lose not because they lack intelligence or opportunity, but because their minds are divided. They are surrounded by noise, yet terrified of silence. They seek approval rather than truth. They confuse pleasure with peace. But Musashi's way, the way of the unbreakable mind, cuts through this confusion. Each of his 8 lessons is a weapon you can carry into modern life. Clarity over chaos means learning to see reality as it is, not through the distortion of social comparison or anxiety. It means being brutally honest with yourself. Discipline over desire means showing up every day, doing the work, especially when it's hard. Motivation fades. Discipline remains. Emptiness over emotion teaches you emotional control, to act with composure when everyone else reacts with panic. In a world that thrives on outrage, your calm becomes your edge. Adaptation over rigidity reminds you that flexibility is strength. You will fail, you will face loss, but the man who adjusts without complaint always survives. Purpose over pleasure is perhaps the hardest. Every day you are tempted by comfort, the easy option, the dopamine hit, the distraction disguised as rest. But the warrior knows that comfort is the slowest form of death. You must choose meaning over ease. Patience over impulse is your shield in a world addicted to speed. Success without patience collapses. Growth without patience decays. Then there is courage over fear, the courage to face your failures, to stand by your convictions, to endure discomfort without escape. And finally, solitude over approval, the art of walking alone in a world obsessed with belonging. If you master solitude, you become immune to manipulation, immune to judgment, and loyal only to truth. Each of these lessons is not a philosophy to admire, but a practice to live. The warrior mindset isn't about aggression, it's about clarity, control, and calm under chaos. Musashi's teachings weren't made for a time of peace or war. They were made for the battle of being human. Chapter 8, The Science of Stillness. Modern research now echoes what Musashi knew intuitively. A neuroscientist at Kyoto University discovered that long-term meditation, what Musashi called stilling the heart, thickens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for discipline and focus. It literally strengthens the muscle of willpower. A Harvard study found that those who delay gratification, those who can resist impulse and endure monotony, tend to succeed not just in career, but in relationships, health, and happiness. In other words, patience creates power, and researchers studying elite athletes have shown that consistent, deliberate repetition, not passion, not inspiration, is what leads to mastery. The neural pathways of excellence are built through boredom. Through persistence, every stroke of the sword, every repetition, rewires the brain to operate at a higher level of precision and calm. Musashi's way was not mystical, it was neuroscience before neuroscience existed. When he spoke of emptiness, he described a state now known as flow, complete immersion, effortless control, absolute focus. It is the mind unbroken by thought. Chapter 9. The 8-Day Warrior Practice. If you wish to begin walking Musashi's path today, start with an 8-day discipline to forge your mind. Day 1. Clarity. Turn off all noise. No phone, no music, no screens. Sit in silence for 1 hour and ask yourself, what truly matters to me? Write it down. Truth emerges when distractions die. Day 2. Discipline. Choose one task, small but consistent, and commit to doing it at the same hour each day, whether it's training, writing, or studying. Let it become your ritual. The body learns obedience through repetition. Day 3. Emptiness. Spend 15 minutes watching your breath. Do not resist thoughts. Let them come and go in that stillness. You will begin to see how little control emotion truly has when you refuse to obey it. Day 4. Adaptation. Intentionally break your routine. Face discomfort. Take a cold shower. Train outdoors. Do something unpredictable and learn to remain calm. Flexibility is your hidden strength. Day 5. Purpose. Identify one habit that wastes your energy: scrolling, gossiping, mindless consumption, and remove it. Replace it with something that serves your purpose. Simplicity sharpens the blade of focus. Day 6. Patience. Work all day on one difficult task without expecting results. Let the process itself be the reward. When you master patience, you master time. Day 7. Courage. Confront one fear. Speak the truth you've been avoiding. Take the action you've postponed. Do it trembling if you must, but do it. Courage is not absence of fear, it's movement through it. Day 8. Solitude. Spend a full day alone, no distractions, no entertainment, just you, your thoughts, and your breath. In that silence, you will hear the voice of the warrior inside you, the one that has been waiting to return. Repeat this cycle not once, but often, because transformation is not a single strike. It is 1,000 disciplined cuts, each one shaping who you are becoming. Chapter 10. The Softness of the Modern Mind. Let's speak honestly now. You say you want to be great, but you seek comfort. You say you want discipline, but you chase dopamine. You want to be focused, but you cannot endure 5 minutes of silence. You jump from hobby to hobby, goal to goal, hoping that somewhere you'll find mastery without repetition. You are not weak because you fail. You are weak because you flee. You flee from boredom, from solitude, from the grind that transforms potential into power. You think you are too special to follow fundamentals, but that is the arrogance of the untrained. Every master was once a student repeating the same motion until it became art. Every strong man was once fragile, but he refused to remain that way. Musashi's voice echoes through time. You can abandon your sword, but you cannot abandon your discipline. The soft mind looks for hacks. The warrior trains until the path becomes who he is. The soft mind complains about difficulty. The warrior gives thanks for resistance. The soft mind seeks approval. The warrior seeks truth. If you continue living for comfort, your spirit will decay. But if you embrace discomfort as your dojo, your life will become your training ground. That is the difference between living and drifting. Chapter 11. The Mountain Within. When Daiichi finally left the mountain, he did not look back. The wind carried the faint scent of cedar and smoke. The same as the day he arrived, but he was no longer the same man. He carried no trophies, no scrolls, no marks of rank, only silence, strength, and an inner steadiness that could not be shaken. As he walked down the path, he remembered Musashi's final words. The mountain you climbed was not this one, it was inside you. He smiled, knowing that his journey had only just begun. And so it is with you, the mountain is within you too, every fear, every weakness, every impulse you must master. The climb is long, and there are no shortcuts, but each day that you train, that you face yourself honestly, You rise a little higher, you become calmer, clearer, more unbreakable. Chapter 12, Forge Your Mind. If you have listened this far, understand this. Musashi's way is not ancient history, it is a living discipline. It demands presence, patience, and courage. You will not become unbreakable overnight, but every moment of focus. Every act of discipline, every breath of awareness forges you. You can remain a prisoner of distraction, or you can become a warrior of the mind. You can live scattered, or you can live sharp. The path is hard, but it is real. Subscribe, not as a fan, but as a fellow student walking the same path. Each video here is a weapon, each story a strike against weakness. Together, we train. Remember Musashi's words, the way is in training. So train every day until your mind becomes still, your purpose becomes clear, and your spirit becomes unbreakable. Walk the path, warrior. The world is chaos, but you can be calm.